Hi everyone. I'm Muneeb, the founder and CEO of Blockstack BBC, and I just landed here this morning, my first time in China. Really excited to be here. Today what I'm going to talk about is Blockstack's path towards building a decentralized computing network, or what people generally call Web3. I think one thing to understand in our space is it seems like there's a lot of innovation, a lot of work going on, a lot of exciting progress being made, but in general, we remain at the very, very early stages of things. And there seem to be different experiments going on in the industry, very different types of architectures that are being tried, and I'm going to try and differentiate what's the work that we've been doing at Blockstack for the last more than 5 years, and how is that architecture somewhat unique and somewhat very different from a lot of other approaches that you might have seen. So not just that our technology tends to be a little bit different, our framework around regulations is also very different. I'm a computer scientist at heart. There used to be a time I could just give presentations without having disclaimers like these on this on slides, but that's no longer true. Basically, the approach we took in terms of regulations was that we were willing to sit down with regulators, mostly the SEC. The company's based out of the US and they are our main regulator. And we basically decided to figure out a legal framework which is compliant with applicable law. And our Stacks token is the first in US history that actually got qualified by the SEC. There's no ongoing offering. This is just a disclaimer that says that I'm not selling anything. This is just a talk about the technology. And if ever there are any offerings, they would be regulated through the SEC, and there might be some forward-looking statements here. With that out of the way, let me tell you a little bit about our thesis around what's happening. Basically, you should think of this as we used to have mainframes, those large computers that would fill up kind of like this entire room, and they came with their own programming models and the way users would interact with them. All of your data and computation was actually with the large system, the mainframe. And this is almost like a pendulum swing, where we went from mainframes to desktops. That was decentralization in a way, right? People got their own computers. You could save your data locally. You were more in control of your information, and you were running desktop programs. And slowly we went from there, almost like a pendulum swing back to a mainframe-like model, only this time we were calling it a cloud, right? If you squint your eyes, these large cloud providers like Google or Facebook, they're these gigantic mainframes that you're dependent on, and not a lot of interesting things are happening at your laptop. What we're excited about, and what a lot of other people in this industry are excited about, is the next wave where users become more in control. Computation and processing moves more towards the edges once again, and that's the revolution of decentralized computing. In terms of companies, what we believe is that in the last 2 decades, we saw large tech monopolies emerge, but the next Google or the next Facebook might not look anything like your traditional company. And that's the idea with these crypto assets. With these crypto assets, the line between who is actually part of a company, let's say a Facebook engineer that is getting stock options from Facebook to actually work on the main technology, is very different from this era, where anyone can participate in this open network, can actually have a financial stake on the underlying crypto asset as well, and participate in building out the ecosystem. So where is Blockstack today? The project started at Princeton University, where I did my PhD, and it was very heavy on doing R&D work first. Most of the team originates from the Princeton Computer Science Department, and over the last 5 years, we have reached a stage where now people can build real useful things or startups and apps on top of us. Just in the last 3 quarters, we've seen a number of independent applications built on top of Blockstack, and these are decentralized apps, right? These are not companies. These are applications that you can just download and you're fully in control of your data. Went from something like 17 to 46 to 186 to now more than 250. And we really think that one of the reasons we are seeing developers being able to build these applications quickly and build real useful things is because of the underlying architecture. And I'll introduce you what that architecture looks like and how it's different from a lot of approaches that we might be used to seeing. Just to give you an idea of what these developers are doing, these apps range all the way from alternatives to Google Docs to professional networking sites like LinkedIn-like alternatives to simple things like note-taking apps. There are multiple blogging platforms built on top. There are multiple applications that let you do your finances privately and so on and so forth. Basically, the limitation here is more around the imagination of the developer and not the underlying technology. So basically what we have done is we have designed a system where you use blockchains as minimally as possible. And that is actually very different from a lot of the earlier approaches that we have seen in the ecosystem. A lot of you would be familiar with Ethereum. So that started off as a project that what I'd like to call a heavy blockchain, where most of the interesting things happen at the blockchain layer. And that also tends to become a scalability bottleneck over there. Blockstack is almost the exact opposite of it. Very little things happen at the blockchain layer. There's very little global state, and most of the things is happening with the clients, right? So it's truly putting the users and the end host more in control, and is reducing the information that should be on a global ledger. And we have done a lot of work on the storage aspect of things. If people are going to realistically move over from cloud computing to decentralized computing, then they need to get almost like comparable performance and reliability from storage as well. So our storage system, Gaia, effectively repurposes cloud-like storage in a completely decentralized and encrypted manner. And the main thing to kind of like focus on over there is, for the user, it just feels like a seamless experience. That yes, I was using something hosted by Google, now I'm using something where I'm in control, but I don't notice the difference. The performance and reliability is almost the same. I mentioned the team a little bit. One thing I would point out is that our team tends to come from more old school distributed systems. Basically people who designed the original internet protocols. One professor, JP Singh, who's on the board of the company with me as well, he received the Presidential Career Award from Bill Clinton in '99. And Mike Friedman, who's a co-author of the Blockstack main technical paper, he received the Presidential Career Award from Barack Obama in 2011. They tend to be more old school scientists who are more in depth on traditional distributed systems, and they're looking at blockchains as basically an extension of traditional distributed systems. And that tends to be a big difference compared to other things that we're seeing in the industry, where people are trying out new, ambitious experiments, whereas Blockstack is bringing more tried and tested concepts from traditional distributed systems to solving problems in decentralized computing. This is what our technical stack looks like. I'm not going to go too much into the technology or go over all of these things, but I'll introduce the high-level important concepts that you need to understand in Blockstack. The first thing is this idea of a universal login. Imagine that on the internet, when you go to new websites, you're actually making a new account everywhere you go. And if you had a universal login, which you control with your private keys, there are no passwords involved, that means that you don't have to create a new account everywhere you go. It's almost like your driver's license. You just show it wherever you need to, and you can seamlessly log in. That helps both developers, who can just use our libraries to integrate this login mechanism instead of like coming up with login with Facebook or basically having some sort of a custom login system. That in a way makes the internet applications or apps built on Blockstack much easier to use. Because there's no difference between signing up or just coming back and using an app. It's always just one click, all of your information is there, the universal login would help you just start using the application. A related concept is this idea of your personal home drive. This is again something you never had on the internet. Your data is scattered across all these different applications and services that you use. In our world, these applications are writing data with the user. So you get this encrypted home drive where all the apps are writing data with the user and you're always in control of your information. The main ways our approach kind of like differs from other approaches in the industry can be broken down into two things. One is scalability. Because we focus on full stack scalability, we're not looking at improving your transactions per second, which we think is not a very appropriate metric. We are rather looking into the metric of user interactions per second, meaning that how many, you need to support like hundreds of millions of user interactions with these systems, and you need to look at that as your performance measure. When you start doing that, your storage layer, your login credentials, your other parts of the stack also kind of like become a part of scalability, and that's the thing that Blockstack really focuses on. The second thing is that we have a very different approach with smart contracts as well. We actually think that most of the programs don't need to be smart contracts at all. Programming languages have been around for decades before smart contracts came in, and most of the applications can be written in languages that you're already familiar with. Only a subset of the logic needs to be smart contracts, basically programs that are dealing with digital assets or digital money, or you want to automate something at the blockchain layer. And over there, the only thing that matters is predictability and security of the smart contract. So our smart contract language called Clarity basically just focuses on predictability, meaning that before running the program, you actually have a mathematical proof what the program can and cannot do. And and most of the programs are not smart contracts. I think if there's one takeaway that you should have, that is that when people are building applications for Web3, it's not that they will have to convert every single thing into a smart contract and start running it on a blockchain. Like we don't think that that's where the world is headed. The Stacks token is a fundamental access control mechanism for the network. Most of the digital assets, like for example the usernames that I mentioned, that get registered at the blockchain level require the use of the token. As I said, that a lot of the interesting things are happening outside of the blockchain layer, but the interactions at the blockchain layer kind of require the need for the Stacks token. Same with our Clarity smart contracts, that when developers are publishing these contracts, or you actually want to use the compute resources at the blockchain layer, you need to consume these tokens. We have a very interesting concept with our token distribution mechanism. Most people here will be familiar with mining, where people are effectively contributing compute resources to the network, and in return for their service for processing transactions, they're getting a distribution of tokens as rewards. We took that concept, worked with game theorists to basically come up with a game theory around how to attract developers as early miners. So instead of contributing their compute resources, these developers are contributing their time and attention and effort. So people who are building high quality applications, and we have this entire decentralized way of ranking quality of these applications where there are different properties and knobs that we can play with. And so imagine that on our network, you have traditional miners, and then you have these teams of developers who are actually building high quality applications. We've been running this program in a pilot phase for the last 6-7 months, and we have a bunch of data that basically points to the fact that developers are extremely interested in this program. and they start competing over the metrics that would help them climb this ranking. So when we were running this program in pilot, we were floating something like $100,000 a month through the program, and in the coming months and year, we're actually going to bump it up all the way to up to $1 million a month. That's real incentives for developers to start building decentralized applications and be early miners on this network. So we remained in kind of like the R&D phase for almost like 5 years. It was a bunch of computer scientists, myself included, were basically building up the core foundations of the network. Over the last something like 8 months, we have started building out our community more. That's one of the reasons we're here in China. And we are trying to basically now educate more developers and more users about what they can do on the Blockstack network. In part of these education efforts, we've been actually fortunate enough that we were featured by the HBO Silicon Valley show. I don't know how many people here have seen it, but in season 5, they tried building a decentralized internet that's partially based on us, one other project in space, and I got some screen credit for it. We are doing a lot of work with universities. For example, at MIT, their decentralized applications course uses Blockstack in all of the lab exercises. There's a new startup in Silicon Valley called Lambda School that is taking on the traditional model of universities, and it basically is a new way for people to learn computer science programming. And all of the students on Lambda School get to build Blockstack applications as well. Educating developers is a big focus for us. And there's a new book on computer networks by Princeton professor Larry Peterson, and he's now including decentralized computing as a concept for students, and again is using Blockstack as the way for introducing decentralized computing. And we really believe that educating developers and reaching out to a global audience is the next phase of our journey. Give you a little bit of history on how the project started or at what level of funding we are at. We have raised around $75 million in total in 4 different rounds. As I said, the project started off as just like 4 people, mostly doing R&D work, and Union Square Ventures led our round, our Series A round, and then we ended up doing our token offerings in 2017, and we just closed one last month. This time around, we had a major focus on Asia. We noticed that because we're based out of the United States, most of our investors and early backers ended up being from the US as well. And in the 2019 offering, we actually had a huge focus on Asia. We were here talking to a lot of investors, and we're really excited to get local support from these regions so that we can partner with them and actually bring our technology to Asia as well. So in summary, I think there are a lot of different approaches to building Web3. Blockstack tends to be a very unique approach, but given the work that we have already done, we are seeing almost like 250 startups already built on top, and these applications can get to millions of users today. So I would really encourage people, especially engineers, to check out our architecture, check out our developer documentations, and see how we are trying to make Web3 real. Thank you.